Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello. How are you? Thank you all for coming tonight and spending some time away from home to listen to this presentation. Before we get started, I do want to acknowledge some of our dignitaries that are out here that came to see the presentation. State Senator Agard, thank you for attending. We have Mayor Julia Ratafrata that's present from the city of Fitchburg. We have Alder Gabriela Gerhardt is here, and Alder Udell, Alder Wheeler. We have you here also present from the city of Fitchburg. I think I got you all. I'm going to introduce our staff. Before I start that, I want to talk a little bit about the process and what it takes to build a police facility. I have approximately 30 years of law enforcement experience, and I sat, when I'm tasked with this project at the beginning of the year, I talked to several chiefs, and I said, hey, I've never built a police station. What's it going to take on my end to build a police facility? And they said it's a full-time job. That's what it's going to take. A full-time job on your end to get this thing going. I'm going to introduce a team because it is a full-time job. This is very long, it's complicated, it's detailed, and extremely time-consuming for one person to take on this task. So I hope this presentation that you're about to hear today is informative, and it shows you the detail that's taken on our end to get us to where we are today. We'll start off with Paul Woodard. He's a retired engineer, worked for the city of Fitchburg, and he's contracted to help us get through this process. We have the FGM architect lead, Andrew Mayo, who's present here, that's also going to be a part of the presentation. And I myself have not done this by, as one person, as I told you. It's consuming us. So Deputy Chief Matt Leahy has played a big role in this process. Soon-to-be Captain Ed Harwick was a part of this, and soon-to-be Captain Andrew McCarthy is here. We also have Police Officer Juan Hinojos, who's part of the ad hoc committee, who spent some time from the police department to help us with this project. We're going to get started with this presentation. We're going to give you a presentation, and on each one of our ends, if there's a question that needs to be answered, we're hoping that we can get you the right answer in as much detail that we can as possible. Again, thank you for, yes, sir.
Do you want questions while the presentation is going on, or you prefer to have them wait to the end?
We're going to have a slide at the end for questions, if that's okay. So if you have some questions, write them down so that you don't forget them, and we're able to actually thoroughly answer that question. And thank you so much, and I hope this presentation is what you're expected for. Thank you. Paul?
Next slide. So I'm going to review the current state of the design and the next step. We'll learn the next steps tonight and then answer some questions. Some key points. This is a citywide project to accommodate current needs and future growth of the police department and the city. It's a purpose-built facility with features specific to the unique needs of policing. This isn't like a typical office building with just office cubes. This project has been through several cycles of council oversight through the CIP and CIP's capital improvement budget process. There's kind of a process we follow for major building projects in the city. The project is first approved in the capital improvement plan, is included in the budget. Then an oversight committee is formed by the mayor, and then the architect is retained by the city. And we're going a little too fast. I talk pretty fast, but not that fast. And then we retain a construction manager, and the construction manager role is to assist in the design of the project in terms of making sure they're doing cost estimates during the design, and then making sure it's constructible in terms of economics. So Public Works plays a key role in this project, and that's what I'm representing as Public Works Department. We manage the design, bidding, construction process, working with the department. User of the facility, in this case, it's the police department. The architect prepares the final program and space needs, and that was done earlier this summer. We're currently finishing up schematic design. That's where we're at tonight. Design development will be the next stage of this project, and then after that, we'll do construction drawings, construction administration. The construction manager will provide constructability input during the design. They prepare estimates, as I mentioned, during the different stages of the design development, and they oversee construction of the facility. So once a contractor is hired, we have a construction manager on site to make sure that the project is being built according to specifications. And then the ad hoc committee meets periodically to provide input on the program and design of the facility as we work through this process. So again, there's the process steps. Architect and construction managers retained through a qualification-based system. So we went out for proposals. Architect works with the city staff, prepares the final space needs and programming based off of previous studies. That program is reviewed by the ad hoc committee, and that was done earlier this summer, back in June or July. As I said, we're in the schematic design phase right now, and that's what Architect is working off of, based off of that programming we did earlier this summer. And schematic design is presented to the public, and that's tonight's meeting. We're presenting to you the schematic design. After tonight, the design will be presented to the Plan Commission and to Council for approval. Development design started after schematic design is approved by Council. So right now we're looking at December 12th, going to the Common Council for approval of schematic design, and then we'll start working on the development design after that. And then once we get some more updated plans, we'll have another public meeting, and we'll have more detail than we're going to have tonight. After that, construction documents are prepared based on the design development. And then after that, we'll go right into bidding the project upon completion of the construction documents. And we're looking at bidding this project late summer of next year. After the award of the bid, the construction begins. And then the user moves in upon completion of the project. And that's probably early 26. Project history.
All right, I'll take over here and move a different perspective. So I'm Lieutenant Ned Hartwick. I'm excited about this project after being with the department for almost 15 years here. So I'm going to take you through some time that predates my time with the police department and talk a little bit how we got here. So in 2000, for those of you that were here, may have been a part of the process, the police department moved into the lower two levels of City Hall. So we occupy the main level if you're coming in from the west side of the building, and then the lower level, the basement level. In 2014, so keep in mind buildings municipally are typically designed to last for a while. In 2014, the city already decided that we need to start studying our space needs for future growth of the police department and City Hall. In 2015, that space needs study was published. And in 2016, the project for a new facility is first mentioned in the CIP and the capital improvement budget. And in 2017, it formally makes an appearance in there. The space needs study, which you can find on our website, is very thorough and took a look at several horizons going all the way out to 20 years. Now, mind you, this is back in 2015 that this is published, so this went all the way out to 2035, which now isn't that far away. It looked at 5, 10, and 20-year horizons, and it examined the concept of a City Hall addition and a standalone building. In addition to the space needs, it also looked at staffing and likely staffing scenarios moving into those horizons. So this graphic here is a very good illustration here of the summary of square footage needs for the facility. You can see for 2020, 5 years out from the published date of this study, that they identified that the police department would need to occupy or need to have 60,000 square feet. I will point out that we're now in almost to 2024 and we are still at 17,783 square feet as a perspective. Going all the way to 2035, identifying 78,874 square feet. So as Paul mentioned from the beginning here, this is a city-wide project, okay? So part of the space needs analysis talked about identifying the future growth of not only the police department, but City Hall. So when the time comes for the police department to vacate City Hall, that leaves 17,783 square feet for City Hall to expand. And for those of you that may not have heard, we are out of office space at City Hall. There is no new office space. We have an entire department of our IT team is working in the basement in the lower level, formerly our emergency government room. So there are no more offices for new employees as the city needs continue to grow. The space needs study went on to identify several key immediate space needs. Now, these were immediate back in 2014, 2015, okay? Among them were evidence storage, secure evidence storage, evidence lab, and evidence processing. Our evidence facility is in the basement. It is prone to exposure to humidity, water, and one of the unique features, anyone that visits City Hall or works in City Hall knows when we have a large drug seizure because of the ventilation system that exists in City Hall. There is no separate ventilation system in our evidence facility, our evidence storage, and a large drug seizure can be smelled throughout the entire City Hall complex. So it's an interesting perk for some folks who work at City Hall. They get to experience that after those large seizures. So we also have immediate space needs that are identified with our armory, where we store ammunition that's needed for training and for daily or for official issue. Office space, we already mentioned, it's at a premium for not only the police department, but for all of City Hall. Conference rooms, and I also know indoor parking facilities. So we run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in all sorts of weather. And unlike other departments, like the fire department, we do not have the ability to park all of our vehicles inside. So there may be times, and I remember times working night shift, where I would come in and my vehicle had not been used at all that day. And so before responding to an emergency call, I would have to scrape off ice and snow, get into a car that's full of probably about $20,000 of expensive electronic equipment, get that fired up, get that working, and then go to this emergency call. So one aspect that was identified back then that we still do not have fully implemented for all of our fleet is indoor parking during inclement weather especially. For everyone's benefit, I'm not going to cover every word in here. We're not going to read this word for word or take turns. But I have this slide up here to illustrate the conversation that has been going on at the City Council level going back to 2017 when this project first appeared in the CIP, Capital Improvement Budget. So over the years, every time this budget has gone through the cycle, changes have been made. Acknowledging the need for this project, going back to 2017. And we'll fast forward to this latest budget. So the key points here to keep in mind are that modifications of the type, size, and funding and timing have gone over 8 CIP cycles. So this is not a new project. This wasn't born yesterday. This has been a project that we've identified a long time ago. And the current process that we're in right now is a result of decisions that have been made by elected officials that are on the council today and several going back several years. So our recent process, do you want to cover our recent process here,
Sure.
Deputy Chief?
My name is Matt Leahy, Deputy Chief. Like Lieutenant Hartwick, I've been here almost 19 years now, and this is one of these projects that I've seen from its infancy, and I'm very excited and eager to get this project moving forward to benefit not only the police department, but all of the entire city and community. So recent events, just to kind of show how long this process has actually been going on for. In addition to the CIP, this year we finally approved in April the FGM Architects as a firm for the architectural and engineering services. In 2023, we met with several of our staff, the police department, as well as other departments within the city. Various work groups to identify what exactly we're going to need collectively in this new building. In 2023, we approved Pepper Construction as a construction management firm. The very first meeting of the ad hoc committee was back in July. And we did this very similar presentation to the committee of the whole back in 2020, or in August of 2023. And in October was the second meeting. The ad hoc committee, who many of you are present here at this meeting, Alder Jim Wheeler, Rosa Agaloo, Andy Potts, Chief Morales,
Officer Nolos, Paul Woodard, and David Rousseau make up the ad hoc committee. So you're probably wondering, okay, beyond the ad hoc, what exactly are we doing to try to get this message out to the community, to make it known that this project is active and ongoing? Starting at the beginning of this year, we've had monthly community meetings in various areas of the city, and during which we've discussed the project to make those in attendance aware. We're actively updating our police department website and putting it out on social media. The fact that this building is in the planning stage. We've utilized our FACT TV public presentation meetings like the one tonight, as well as the ad hoc committee meetings and council meetings where we've discussed this project numerous times. So here's some upcoming milestones or past milestones for the project. I'm not going to go into every single one of them, but we hope to get final bidding and begin the construction later in 2024.
And the key point here is that there are 3 points between now and September 2024 where this project goes to council for approval, to include the schematic design approval, the additional layer of design approval, and then the bid approval in 2024.
So the programming. One of the biggest things that we want to take into consideration when building this building is we want to make it sustainable. We want to make this building rooted in best practice standards, with our focus on accreditation, moving towards accreditation, enhanced accessibility for the public, for victims, for witnesses, for officers, encouraging community engagement. We'll go into kind of how we're going to incorporate that. Officer training, which is not only recommended in the President's Task Force 21st Century Policing from 2015, but also right in our own backyard with the United Way of Dane County recommendations that was born out of 2016. Officer wellness, as well as the enhanced technology and the need for police departments to have advanced technology. So again, we keep saying this word purpose-built. What does that mean? Essentially what that means is there's no wasted space in this building. Every portion of this building has a specific purpose behind it. From the administration, the investigations, patrol, and then within that, we have our dispatch center. We have our evidence, which was obviously identified as an immediate need back in 2014. Our records, our professional staff, our record specialists, support, which could include our court liaison, our social worker, our community service officers, spot for our FACT TV, IT, our booking and temporary holding facility, wellness and fitness, as well as training components. So the preferred schematic design, approximately 74,000 square feet, which does include indoor parking, multiple levels, recognizing sustainability features, as well as those training components. High-functioning police departments will have all of these components, which allow for that flexibility of growth because we are a rapidly growing city. We've recently surpassed 34,000 residents, with approximately 725 residents every year. So we need to be prepared from a city standpoint and from a police department standpoint to allow for that growth that we are going to have as a department and as a city.
I think Andrew Mayo from FGM will now take us through
The schematic design.
So I'm going to go through a series of our plans, start with the site plan, go through the floor plans, and then you get to see the pretty pictures. So what you're looking at right now is the site plan. The proposed location for the building is directly across Research Park Drive from the public library. So the two buildings will kind of face each other across Research Park Drive. What you'll see In the kind of tan color, that's the public entry to the building, along with a series of public parking spaces to the north. There is a ring accessible road around the entire building. That's mainly to serve staff. So there will be staff entrance off of Research Park Drive as well as off of Lacey Road with ample staff parking down below. As Ned and Matt said previously, we took a look 20 years out to see, all right, where is Fitchburg Police going to be in 20 years? What's their staffing going to look like? And then we need to accommodate that both in all of the site amenities as well as inside the building. Some other key site components, we're really not touching the northwest portion of the site. We're pretty much leaving that as natural as possible, knowing that Nine Springs Creek runs right through there. We're trying to maintain the required setbacks off of that creek, as well as treating any of the stormwater from the site before it enters the watershed. Next slide. So I'm going to start down in the lower level. Building's kind of built into a hillside, so this lower level, even though it is a basement level, is daylit out to the north and the west. So the big gray box there is the squad garage. That's where all of the very expensive vehicles with their very expensive equipment would be parked, as well as other miscellaneous equipment for staff to use. Below that in the green, that is the scenario and tactical training area. The way we've set this building up is that can not only be used by Fitchburg Police, but also outside agencies. That staircase just to the left that you see there in the tan color, that has direct access to the lobby above. So with minimal escort from Fitchburg Police, outside agencies can get in and use this facility as well. And I know by working with other agencies in Dane County, I know this is a very big need across the board. Another area that's purpose-built, as Matt said, for police use would be evidence in the teal color up there. So that has all of your evidence processing, your evidence lab, your storage, as well as vehicle processing bay. All of these are designed to meet any of the WILEAG accreditation standards, making sure that this purpose-built facility meets the needs of Fitchburg as well as any accreditation they seek in the future. Some of the smaller yellow areas you see, those are areas dedicated for patrol staff. That's a lot of where their equipment will be stored. So it's grab and go. They can come down the stairs, grab what they need, and get right out to their squad and get out to the street and keep you safe. From here, I'll go upstairs. This is the main floor of the building. That entry plaza that I mentioned on the site plan, that brings you right into the front of the building there, into a generous lobby, double height. Off of that lobby, there are public amenities. Mainly the training room we're considering a multi-purpose room in this building that will be open for public use and public access. It's divisible into 2 separate rooms. Each room can accommodate 50 in tables and chairs. To the left of the entry is the records area. So that's the primary day-to-day functions that the public would interact with when they come into the police department. Another area that public would interact with potentially is in the green to the right above the training room. That's the social worker suite. So we understand that policing is not just catching bad guys, but it's also, accommodating any of those victims or witness needs and making sure they feel comfortable in the space that they're in. Additionally, on the public side, there are 4 individual restrooms. Understanding that there needs to be equity for all using this building, we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable in the building, in the public settings of the building. Now getting into more of the staff-specific spaces, to the left there you see a large dispatch and IT area. that has room for growth up to 6 dispatch stations. Right next to that is the interview suite. That is accessible from the staff area as well as from the lobby. So they can bring witnesses in or potential suspects in there and immediately have access down the hall to the detention area if needed. Before I get to detention, the yellow-green areas, those are your patrol areas. That's where the day-to-day operations for all the sergeants, lieutenants, and patrol staff happen. They have a large briefing room as well as a smaller breakout conference room and offices. All of the green-blue spaces, I'll call them, those are all staff support spaces. So not only their break room, but also, we mentioned earlier, officer wellness is a big component of this building. So on each floor, you'll see an officer wellness room. That can duplicate as a lactation room or even as a respite if third shift has court in the morning. They can go and take a quick break off after their shift before they have to go to court. What we're doing in those spaces is really unique in that we're taking into consideration all of the stresses that these first responders have in their day-to-day lives, and how do we help using the facility to de-stress on shift or after. Then in the purple there is the municipal lockup and the detention area. So this is where anyone in custody would be processed, kept for questioning, as well as all the way to the left there is the public entry for bond out. So if someone's coming to pick someone up, there's a transaction window there where you can meet with an officer and escort your counterpart out of the building. Now up to the second floor. On the second floor, we have investigations as well as command staff. Investigations is to the left there. There's a large investigation suite for all of their workstations, as well as meeting areas, and one unique feature in the bottom right corner of investigations is a major case room. So if anything were to happen in the city that requires more than just Fitchburg Police, that's where they'd go. It's a large situation room where outside agencies, be it state police, FBI, other cities, they can all come to this room and meet and don't necessarily have to disrupt the day-to-day operations of the police department. Again, break areas and wellness areas located on this floor with a roof deck off of the break room on this floor to take advantage of some of the views of nature to the northwest there. On the right-hand side, you see command staff. So all of the gentlemen here, this is where their offices would be, as well as meeting rooms and record storage areas for their files. Now the pretty pictures. So after many iterations of the exterior design of this building, this is where we are at the end of schematic design. Mixture of different materials, including brick, cultured stone, metal panel, and glass. The intent here is to make the building feel safe but welcoming. So that's that large volume of glass welcoming the public into the building, making you feel like this is part of your community and you're welcome in here, you're not ostracized. But at the same time, it needs to feel safe and secure, so that's why you see a lot of the brick and stone around the building. Just taking a tour around the building here. So this is the view from Lacey Road and Research Park Drive. Again, you see the entry to the right there, and then keep going then. This would be view from the staff parking lot. So as you can see, the volume changes quite a bit from the front of the building to the back of the building because of the hill that we're building this into. Just another view from the parking lot here.
All right.
I think we can cover a few things related to budget, if you can just bear with us with any questions that you have here. So in 2020, the amount identified for this project was $35 million. There was a change that was made, and we're now back at $35 million. Now, keep in mind, the cost of eggs to the cost of building materials has increased substantially since 2020, when we initially set that 35 million aside. We talked about the interplay between the architect and the construction management company coming in to provide guidance. The initial, very initial rough estimate for this before we started getting anywhere near into the details that we've just gotten was at 44 million. Okay, that again, a very initial amount based on a couple of factors and some very generous assumptions. We do have Jared from Pepper Construction here to answer questions related to that number. Right now, we are going through a very detailed process to include even the number of phones and other pieces of technology that we'd be putting into the building to get a much more accurate number based on current pricing and to really reflect the work that FGM has done to really hone us in as far as our purpose-built facility and the needs of that facility. So, I'm just going to run through a series of questions here. We are all part of this community, whether we're elected officials, whether we work here, live here, or just pass through. And I think as a group, it's important for us to kind of assess some of these questions. So do we want to be prepared for the future? We see the growth of our city on a daily basis. Do we want to be prepared for that? The growing city hall that we've talked about and the growing police department that we all in the police department experience on a daily basis. Do we want to ensure a safe environment, one that reduces risk for employees, for visitors, and for those in our custody? We have a great deal of responsibility any given day that we bring someone into our facility to make sure that it's safe and that it's following best practices and contemporary standards. Do we have a desire to address the environmental impacts of police vehicles and facilities? I think our community is very forward-thinking. We are concerned about the environment. However, some things in our line of work, namely being a 24/7 facility that has to operate 24/7 and having cars that are on the road 24/7, the technology that a lot of us want to have just isn't quite there yet. We have, as I mentioned, we have had a success in getting some of our newer vehicles inside to the existing garage at City Hall. We're actually able to plug those vehicles in so it reduces our idle time. It's not charging the vehicles, but it's reducing idle time. So we're trying to work on those things, but this facility can help build towards those things. Do we want to create a space that fosters increased community engagement? So we mentioned the 2 community meeting rooms, so we could have a meeting like this with better air conditioning that could accommodate 100 people in a facility, and people could feel welcome coming in that nice main entrance. Do we want to ensure that our police personnel are highly competent in order to meet the high expectations of our community? Nearly every month, we have a new situation that's presented either locally or nationally where expectations for law enforcement agencies are increased. And with those increased expectations means more training, it means more discussion, it means more time away from work so that officers can become more knowledgeable and up to date with the expectations and meet the expectations of our community. And do we want to attract the most talented workforce while retaining our valued employees and ensuring they are well? I can tell you, being here for 15 years, there is a psychological impact of going into work, going down into the basement of City Hall, and starting your day in the basement of a building that's windowless, has artificial light, and then working in an environment that has limited access to outdoor light, and being in cramped quarters. When we are working in a highly competitive environment with other law enforcement agencies that are offering substantially more pay, I feel that this is a unique opportunity for us to design a facility that's going to become somewhat of a beacon, if you will, to attract people to come and work for us and to keep our employees who are very dedicated and have stuck with us in these challenging times. So just to recap here very quickly, the facility will allow for City Hall growth. It's going to vacate that 17,000 square feet, enhance city sustainability efforts. We're going to create a purpose-built facility for our current needs and future growth, provide that welcoming community space, build a safer environment that moves us closer to accreditation. And again, just for those that may not be familiar, accreditation is basically a set of contemporary standards that keeps us in line with best practices in law enforcement and policing. And then finally, as I talked about, aid in recruiting and retention of personnel by focusing on wellness and training. So real quick, next steps, December 12th we talked about is the council approval of schematic design. So this is what Andrew just mentioned, and then from there we move into design development. Chief?
I just want to reiterate a couple of things before we open it up to questions. Many of you have saw the press conference that we had last week, and it ties into the police facility. I'm going to give you a short version on staffing for law enforcement in a growing city. You're going to hear numbers. The number itself is not a fixed number. It all depends on a number of different variables to create a number. So I'm going to give you some averages. On average, nationwide, per 1,000, you're at around 2.4 officers per 1,000 throughout our nation. The Midwest average is roughly about two per 1,000, 2 officers per 1,000. The Wisconsin average is about 1.9 officers per 1,000. The city of Fitchburg, for a mid-sized city, is one of the lowest staffed police departments in the state of Wisconsin for our size. And that's not to blame our elected officials. Fitchburg is also one of the fastest growing cities in the state, which is hard to keep up. What are the dynamics on this? So we're at about 1.6 officers per 1,000. One officer brings that up 0.3 of 1,000. I think it's 0.03, 0.25 of 1,000. So if you wanted to just round it off to 2, we're at 55 sworn for 34,000 currently. And we're close, and we're on pace to hit 40,000 in less than 10 years. We're guesstimating around 7 years where we're hitting 40,000 residents. The city's growing fast. You talk to different people that know the city's growth and have a pulse for it. We'll be over 50. We won't even, you're talking about 20, 30, 40 years from now, we're looking at 100,000 residents for the city of Fitchburg. Dane County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state. Not just Fitchburg is growing, the surrounding cities are growing. It's difficult to have an essential service like the City of Fitchburg Police Department for us to effectively do our job in the City of Fitchburg when we're growing this fast. So we talked about staffing last week in a press conference. We got a federal grant awarded to us to help us. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. Where are we going to have our staff when we're bursting at the seams in City Hall? In addition to that, the areas, we did reduce some square footage in the design, but we're looking at multiple purposes. We use training center, but it's a community room. If we want to be community-centric, we've got to be able to host meetings and open to the public in that area. To give you an idea of what the size of that community room, training room, where you have multiple meetings, public meetings, it's no difference than the size of our community room or our meeting room in our public library. They're basically about the same size, just to give you a perspective of what the size of that room is going to be. Training. If you watch the news, and I know many of you have seen a lot of tragic events that occurred in law enforcement throughout the years. Those things can rock our nation and really push us backwards in police-community relations. But if you look at what the best practices in to recover from that, what to do, the number one thing always resorts back to training. So if you want the police force that's going to be able to prevent or mitigate those risks, training is a huge component. For many of you who have worked in supervision, supervision is a piece where you have to, if you see a deficiency or something that you need to correct, you correct it immediately. Even as you raise your child. Child makes a mistake, you make that correction immediately. Having an ability to train and correct those actions immediately after observing a deficiency is something that you need to be able to do in the future. And lastly, understand that this facility is a 24/7, 365-day operation. Police is an essential service to any community. and we have to be available when you're sleeping peacefully in your bed at night. Now we'll open up to question if there's any other comments. And thank you very much for listening. Yes, ma'am.
How can the community help with getting this completion? How can the community help with this program?
Can you,
Yeah, how can the community help in this effort to get it to completion?
the question is, how can the community help in getting this, this part of the mission completed? Your support. The council is the final ultimate say in this piece. The council answers to you, the resident. So understanding if it's important to the residents, it has to be important to our council. And that's who you have to be able to, for you all here. If it's important to you, you have to bring it up to your council and inform them when it's time to make a decision. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not.
I'm sorry.
I assume that our city wants to meet needs of residents in addition to the needs of officers. And it sounds like the original approved plan way back when for a building was going to cost $25 million. An ideal police facility sounds really awesome. And I'm coming at it from a perspective as a public school teacher myself. I know that many of our residents are forced to live in very sub-ideal housing. And the goal of policing is to help residents feel safe and supported. So when the budget was increased multiple times, what additional analysis did the city do to ensure that this plan to now spend $35 million was in the best interest and the best use of funds to support our residents who most need these services and who most use these services?
Okay, so that was a long-winded question.
Yeah.
Is it a question or is it a statement?
It's a question. I'm wondering what consideration, and it may not even be necessarily for you, but the city, in their budgeting process, would have made some sort of determinations of, yes, this is worth increasing from 25 million to 35 million. And in that determination, they would have decided, you know what, we are definitely going to spend the money in this area instead of, for example, vouchers for residents who need support in housing stability. So what kind of determinations were made there? I know that the police department obviously wants to support residents, just like the rest of us want to support residents.
I'll start off and see if I can answer that question.
Yeah.
There was a space needs study conducted by a professional company. They were hired, they were contracted to do a space needs study in 2014. They published their study in February of 2015 that expressed what was urgent in that space needs and what needed to be done. And that was a part of our presentation where it indicated we needed a facility that would last us up to approximately 2035 for a 78,000 square foot facility. So that was presented. Now, simply from what I'm understanding, I wasn't here in 2014, 2015, when those decisions were made and identifying an approximate number. There were other consultants that were brought in to identify what the square footage would be. Now, what's unique, and as you've seen in our presentation on a police facility, it's a purpose-built facility, which complicates things because it's not just office space, it's not just square footage. So that number that was identified, and I think, Andrew, you were brought in 2018 to kind of give a rough...
I've been talking to Chad about this project since 2018.
2018 to get some rough idea. What was brought up back then, I don't know if they, well, through you, they would have understood that this was a purpose-built facility to identify some of those numbers. But I can tell you, as a purpose-built facility, to identify the cost at just square footage, I could tell you right away, and I said it without even talking to consultants or professionals, it would be too low of a number. Because once you start coming up with the materials for a temporary holding facility, the materials that you need and exhaust equipment for processing evidence, those things can get quite expensive in itself, and those are needs in a police facility. And the technology that goes for the IT piece on it. So I'm not the professional to tell you how we came up from the numbers. I could just tell you that there was a lot of thought and consulting to identify that piece.
And if this is the ideal plan, is there a alternate plan that could be presented as another option, like that's less ideal?
Well, if you're less ideal, then we stay where we're at. Because we're already bursting at the seams. This is the next step, and I think for square footage with the growth that we're expecting with just the sworn staff and the items we need, it's going to be, you might as well not build one if you're looking at that. And I don't want to say it in a bad way, but then you're not really funding the police, you're defunding them. If you want to use that money to use it in some other services, you're not helping the police, the needs of the police department to help the community if you're taking that money away. And that's the way I'm understanding what you're explaining.
Okay.
Chief,
So correct? Yes, ma'am.
Just as a member of the community, and you mentioned that the community is growing, and a lot of times citizens don't understand what's involved in providing police services to a community that's growing. When you needed 5 officers in a year, in 2 or 3, 4 years, you're gonna need 15. And that community that needs to be served is the needs are increasing too. And in providing police services, it's not just hiding someone and bringing into the force and send them out there. So it's a budget question that I think you're asking, and I understand the priorities. That would be probably the mayor and the city council that could answer, why do we think of putting 35 million here and not in providing vouchers? Well, I could tell you that you have to make a decision where the priorities are at the moment, because you could get vouchers someplace else too, if you want to. But when it comes to police services, the growing community that we have right now, it's a demand for this service, for the services. And I don't know if that addresses your concern, but I kind of feel that, yeah, how do we decide that we're going to put the money in here? 25 million before, with the inflation and all that, is not going to get us that far at this moment. So.
And if I could also just jump in and add, as
Part of the space needs study that was done in looking at staffing needs, the consultant looked at the unique needs of our community in the sense of the age of our population, the education level, all of the things that a 34,000 resident community in one part of the state doesn't have the same needs and challenge, or may not have the same challenges as a 34,000 resident community in another part of the state. And so they examined those unique features to come up with staffing, which then staffing is really kind of one of the key drivers for how many people, how large of a space that we need to occupy, to have the number of vehicles, to have, if we're generating, say, 25,000 calls for service a year, roughly how many pieces of evidence does that mean that we're going to have? All those types of things all factor into it. I think that kind of addresses one part of your question. The second part about prioritizing and spending the budget then gets into, if we build an inadequate facility or a facility that's not going to last, constantly building facilities and going through this process and using time and everybody's time to go through this process in the long term ends up costing a lot more money and is, I would argue, is less efficient to the community and to anyone that is a part of the community over time. And so I think spending the time to deliberate and think about these things effectively now and efficiently now and follow best practices and best standards ends up being, it might have a sticker shock effect, but I equate it to the fire department when they purchase a multi-million-dollar ladder truck. And people think, well, no, there are not that many multi-level buildings in the community. Why do we need to spend $2 million on a ladder truck? Well, number one, that truck typically lasts for 20 years or is driven for 20 years. And when you're on the 3rd or 4th level of the hotel that's on fire, you want that ladder truck that's there. You want that piece of equipment that's best suited for that situation at the time. So I hope that kind of gives you a little added perspective in talking about that. And then on top of it, then I would defer to an elected official for their ultimate perspective on those priorities.
I don't want to say to that piece, but what I'm getting at is, as the city grows, you still need services. And Fitchburg is a very, very safe community, but you still have the constant calls. And as the city grows, we need to respond to those calls. And when you have just the complexity of the city like this with multi-unit apartment complexes, it's very difficult for one officer to walk into these complexes when there's a disturbance. And that's why where I'm getting at is, it's difficult to say, let's put this on the shelf and try to deal with it later, because the costs just continue to accrue, and we got to do something about it. So I didn't want to bring it up as ours, but when you're making a decision like this, it's an essential service. Yes.
In the design, do we have anything for natural disasters so that the community could seek refuge in the facility if needed?
It's something we've been talking about, but again, weighing the necessity or convenience of that versus the budget that the city council has given the project. That's one of those things that it'd be nice to have, but not necessarily a need. But that is one thing that we've been exploring some various grant opportunities. That is one thing that there is some funding available for. It wouldn't cover 100% of the cost, but it is on the table.
First of all, is there a tornado shelter for this building? Where is it?
That's pretty much what the question just was.
Yeah, but if you're hosting people, like 100 people at an event, you want to make sure you have some place to go to if there's a tornado warning, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that's a nice to have. I think that's a need to have, personally. I mean, I thought you were talking like there's nuclear disaster or something like that.
No, natural disasters, yeah.
Say Fitchburg was going to go into the shelter. But if we're going to be hosting community events and we want to be protecting our personnel, I mean, can they go into the underground parking? Or?
Yeah, so the difference there is having a natural disaster plan for a tornado, let's say, and saying anybody in this building is going to go to this location in the building, and that's the safest location in the building, that's the tornado shelter of the building, versus having a purpose-built space that can withstand an F5 tornado that's built to the FEMA standard ICC 500, and that's the space that is very expensive.
And advertised as a public space, so someone that may be down the street that doesn't have access to that
would then come to the police department. A good example might be a good kind of middle ground, might be a cooling center or a warming center, using the library or the community center as a space for that. So that community meeting space could potentially, to your question, could potentially be used in those scenarios. But again, as Andrew indicated, it would not necessarily meet the standards and be advertised and be listed as a federal resource for some place to go in the event of some sort of natural disaster.
So could staff go down to underground parking? Okay.
Circle?
What will the impact be on the insurability of the police department? I assume that not having an adequate facility means that certain insurance costs are higher. Could you speak to the impact that you expect to reduce costs, probably?
One of the questions that was brought up was the insurance costs. Do they get reduced? One of the things we talk about in law enforcement is accreditation standards that we cannot meet today. So I asked CIPMIC. Don't ask me to spell out what CIPMIC is, but that's the insurance that we use through most municipalities in the state of Wisconsin use for their insurance. When you're an accredited organization, your civil suits, your workman's comp complaints, several things that they end up the insurance pays out are reduced substantially. So that's where you save on your costs is on those claims. And being accredited is pushed through the city because that's where you save your money. And here's where things can impact the cost and workman's comp complaints. For example, the exterior, when we're warming up our cars, we've had several people rush into an assignment, including myself, turning on your vehicle, slipping over the ice on a vehicle that's been snowed and everything's frozen over. You have your area, you have your vehicle inside. The wear and tear in a vehicle, if you have them inside, like we stated, where you're able to connect them to the outlet and save some of the engine life, you're saving on the cost of the training component, the accredited pieces where we have to review the body camera of the video of our vehicle, of our officers, and randomly review video to identify deficiencies and address it through a training need as soon as practical. That helps the claims from things that go through CIVMEC. So there's a number of things. Our evidence, we lose evidence. It can be very costly in a court case, whether it's a criminal court case or civil court case. We damage things. The list goes on and on. But what fact is, when you're an accredited organization, those costs that the insurance pay out are the ones where you save.
I think it'd be nice to highlight that in your future material.
Thank you, sir.
I got lots more questions.
Sure.
The bulletproof glass, what can it take and what can't it take? Because you've got picture windows basically on the first floor.
So that's something that we're going to explore in design development.
Repeat the question, please. She's interested in the ballistic glass around the building, what it's capable of sustaining.
So there's a multitude of ways of hardening the building against attack, and whether it's the exterior glass or even the interior glass. And it's not just the glass, it's also the walls, because bullets don't just go through glass, they go through walls as well. So it's making sure that we're providing a safe and secure envelope around the whole building. So part of our design development process is going to be working with the police staff on determining where they want to harden the building and to what level. So that's yet to be determined.
You have very big windows in some of those spaces. And I mean, people can get assault rifles. So I know it's going to be expensive, but if we're going to put the money into the glass, we really need to make sure that it works.
There are also products out there so ballistic rated glass is very expensive. There are products out there that are about a fifth the cost that do similar duty to the ballistic glass. So we'll explore all of those options.
Can ballistic glass sustain, what about an assault rifle, quite frankly? If somebody walked up and used an assault rifle on the glass, would the glass be able to?
Again, depends on the glass, depends on what it's rated. So the Underwriters Laboratory has a series of ratings for the glass. So part of what we're going to do with staff is determine to what level we want to secure the building.
Okay.
So the short answer is yes, there's glass out there that can stop an assault rifle.
Okay, how far back is the building set from the street, the front part of it?
I want to say it's 40 feet.
Okay.
So part of what we'll do in design development is do an analysis of the exterior of the building and determine where to harden the building, not only on the building itself, but also the landscape and the hardscape. So rather than having a bunch of steel security bollards around the building, using the hardscape to mitigate the threat from the street.
Sure. On these public, or the comments, email address, when people send emails to that, are our alders and mayor, are they copied on that as well? Or is that just going to police personnel?
As of right now,
It's going to the team that's up here right now at the moment.
Yeah, so what I'm happy all those comments, I'm glad you brought that. There is an email that we'll put that at the end of the presentation you're doing now. So before December 12th, our thinking is that any of the comments that we get in, we'll provide to the council with a response back from the team up here, what our response is to those questions. And we'll also provide responses back to the council from any comments they're asked tonight.
Okay.
So yes, they'll be shared with the council.
Okay.
There's another question over here.
James Tingham, I'm asking these questions both as a resident and a member of the Resource Conservation Committee. You said you are supporting city sustainability efforts. I don't know specifically what those goals are. And so my question is I think we want a building that the police department can be proud of in health and wellness, but also a building that the community will be proud of as far as energy efficiency, soft landscaping, and similar. So what specifically are you planning at looking at or addressing with regards to energy efficiency, renewable energy, resilient energy? Are there targets for similar buildings in similar climates that you're trying to get setting a goal against performing better or percentage better?
So right now, short answer, yes. Our firm is part of the AIA 2030 commitment, so we are benchmarking our projects constantly and trying to improve that benchmark constantly. The longer answer is we have we have to weigh the city of Fitchburg's budget with the city of Fitchburg's sustainability goals. So as part of the ad hoc committee that we had before this meeting, we went through a long list of various sustainability features we could include in the building, some of which are included as a baseline in the base scope. Others would be enhancements to that base scope. We earmarked $2.5 million allowance for those enhancements, and it'll be up to collectively the committees and the elected officials to determine how best to spend that money, and if you want to spend more than that $2.5 million to hit whatever goals you see as a city as far as this building's concerned.
So would you then interact with the Resource Conservation Committee to have this dialogue and this constructive dialogue, so some of those sustainability goals with that committee can be discussed?
Yeah, so we're actually scheduled to meet with the committee in January. Jared and his team at Pepper Construction have our schematic design package right now. They're pricing out not only the base package, but also kind of an a la carte list of options as far as sustainability is concerned, so that the collective committees can see those options and weigh pros and cons of each and determine which are best suited for City of Fitchburg and Fitchburg Police Department.
I assume you're using lessons learned from like the Fitchburg Library and their systems, and what works, what can be improved, and what's valuable to look at further.
Yes, I've heard certain stories about particular systems on the library that have failed after less than a decade. So yes, we're constantly bettering our knowledge on sustainability and making sure that we're doing the best we can with the knowledge that we have for this current project.
Thank you.
Great question. Go back.
Where can we find this slide deck on the Fitchburg website?
There's a version of it that's already posted on the police facility page. That was the presentation that was made to the committee of the whole back in August, and this version
will go on there as well.
Gentlemen, I'm a Fitchburg resident. I'm on the Landmark Preservation Committee too, but I'm also an architect with a law enforcement background. And just from what you've been showing here, and I'm not as familiar with the study, I was familiar with the 2015 study, but I've gotten just a quick look at what you showed. I think that's a few things stand out from it. I believe that looks like an excellent site you've chosen. And I think the two things that stand out in addition to that are the addition of the large parking garage, which I think is very important, and the training area, which you've shown. And one thing I did want to ask was, you've gone to other facilities, I understand, to McFarland, some other locations. What did you get out of those site visits, and what was the kind of the big things that came out of it?
That was one we were prepared for, and we're prepared for that question, but we prefer the ones that are not law enforcement that attended. We have Alder Udell that was present. We have Mayor Arata Prata who was present, and we also have Dave Shaw, a community resident, who also went out to this visit. I'm trying to think who else that is not law enforcement. Oh yeah, Alder Jetzer also was present. I would like for one of them to share their experience, because just as one of our misunderstandings here, we speak cop talk, and sometimes it's hard for the public to understand our cop talk. When they went they need to share their experience with you on how things made sense when we went on the tour with them. I think that is going to hold more water than us presented, because we learned a lot, but I think they need to get up in it. I would ask for one of you to answer some of those questions if you don't mind, one of your three.
Mayor, do you want to lead that?
So one of the, the idea with the field trip, we went to Illinois. We visited 2 police stations there. So the idea, because we as a council member, a civilian, we don't understand what are the components, of a police station. We can. I have an idea what are the components of an office space, you know what I mean? But I don't have a clue about police. So it was a good experience for me to go and see, okay, how a police station, a new police station look like, with the new component, the workflow inside. One of the things that I was kind of reluctant at the beginning was the training facility. So because I have another concept of what a training facility was, but then in this new modern police station, the training facility can be, not only shooting range, but also can use for other type of training. You know what I mean? That I didn't know about that. You know what I mean? So that one, it was for me an open eye, to see, oh, this is how a training facility look like. You know what I mean? I have a totally misunderstanding of how those training facilities look like. So that one was, and the workflow of the police station, and how, the 2 police stations that we visit, they have a very good lobby. When you go there, you don't see like you're in the police station. It's very welcoming, and you know what I mean? So some of them, they have more, sustainable features than other ones, you know what I mean? So that one was good to see too. I don't know, that's it. You Bill,
Dave?
Thanks. I would piggyback on what the mayor said about training. Training just jumped out at both the facilities we went to, and how important that was, not only to keep our police officers safe, but our public safe. By doing the proper training, all of those things, these scenario rooms, it was just emphasized by the policemen and women that were giving us the tours, how important that was to keep these guys really well trained, to keep us safe, and that jumped out just in spades. The other thing was the meticulousness of evidence that has to be handled, and the volume of evidence in these places. It's almost overwhelming when you see what these guys, these men and women, have to go through when they have to take care of evidence in a meticulous fashion. And you can see, I think it's woefully needed in this new station. So the training and just handling the evidence jumped out at me as a layperson.
Senator?
So I know that we just were able to receive additional grant money for community policing and peacemaking within the community. Having more square footage in this facility, will that allow opportunities for wraparound services and human support agencies to be able to provide services to folks that you all are working with? And can you show us where that would happen on the map or on the blueprint?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question, Senator. So one of the pleasures that I have as the support services lieutenant, so I supervise pretty much anyone that works for the police department that doesn't wear a uniform, and that includes kind of our best kept secret, which is our half-time social worker. And she splits her time with the senior center. Our goal is to get her to a full-time position, but one of her greatest success stories is building a number of partnerships with community service providers, from birth and pregnancy to senior services. I think we kind of, Andrew touched on it just a little bit here, but we have this very large, generous lobby, which if you've been to our facility, our lobby is essentially a hallway. There is really no space that is welcoming there, and people often aren't even able to really navigate that space. So you're going to come into this lobby, which we just discussed was a benefit, just a welcoming environment here. But you have this large chunk here that is designated for our social worker with a large meeting room and a waiting area. And so she has become extremely proficient at navigating challenges of a lot of our higher need consumers in the sense of repeat calls for service, folks that have needs that aren't best addressed by law enforcement but end up involving us. And so I see her as kind of the catalyst for then bringing in other service providers, not only to share her office space or use her office space on a semi-regular basis, but then also to branch out into those meeting rooms, have informational clinics or meetings, resource fairs, those types of things. And I think really having that inviting space with that flexibility will be key to providing those services.
Yes, sir.
2035 isn't that far off. When this gets built, how long do you think it's going to last before you need to expand again? Then do you add on or do precincts like bigger cities, or where do you go from there?
A couple of things. There is some area that we can grow here in this building, or you can add on or do some things to it to fit a growing number of sworn if we were to go there. I can give you a little experience, and if you can research this. There's cities that are close to 100,000. Cities very similar to Fitchburg, it's still one police station. I think the model that I would like to see, I won't be around 20, 30 years. I hope I'm not still working. But what the model that you're seeing currently is public spaces or private spaces that are offered for public services where you can satellite out. You don't know how Fitchburg, we got an idea how the north is growing. We don't know how the south is growing. So to use, to build a second precinct, I could see more of public space from let's just say, Latino Chamber of Commerce, providing a workspace there where not only law enforcement can go to file a report, but somebody from Department of Public Works, an assessor, an inspector, where they don't want to come back to the City Hall campus, but they're going to do their work there. Some areas use, they call them cop houses. But they move from cop houses, which City Racine uses, more to a public space that the city can use. And some of it's provided through maybe that facility, and then the city takes on the Wi-Fi space and some of the IT, so that it can be an area where now you can even meet with the community there. That's where I would see Fitchburg growing. As you're growing, you need other space needs where you would satellite out there.
Just one point. So 2035 is based on the 2015 study where we came in and redid the program. So our programming is for 20 years. That's basically the amount of time that we can look into the crystal ball. Anything beyond that, and it's really a very big guess. So as designed right now, that facility is set to last, the space needs 20 plus years. The facility itself should last 50 plus.
I got three quick questions for you. The first one is piggybacking what he just said, has to do with the space, not like the county jail, but can this building be added on upward?
It could be.
Or did you ever look at that?
It could be. So typically what we find is when communities say, okay, let's plan for that 50 plus years out. Let's put the structure in this building so that we can then build up. They typically don't, because the building becomes outdated at that point.
So you haven't looked at it?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is early on, you say everything's on the table, and you quickly whittle down to, all right, what's the ideal for the city of Fitchburg? So ideally, this is the building. Could you build above what we're designing? Yes. Would it cost a lot of money? Yes. So it's weighing the pros and cons of are you actually going to use that?
Well, you have to
that
remember
structure
that a lot of people in this room won't be here in the future when we go up. If you go up, it'll be, we won't be here probably. And you've got to look at that. Chief, I got a few questions for you. The architect went through this so quick, and it's very important, that building, obviously, and it was pretty small to look at. Is there a firing range in the basement?
There was one in the design for today that we showed. And we're not calling it that, but it is a firing range. It's we use it as a scenario room because the current style and ranges are not what you see in Lethal Weapon or movies like that. And that's why it was important for this field trip, is to show what current ranges look like. They're multi-purpose. A lot of things in this design are multi-purpose, so that you don't use them for one particular piece, but it's an area that's next to the garage.
It's
on the
in
lower
the
level.
building.
Yes, yes, sir.
Do you have a holding cell in that building?
Yes, temporary holding facility, yes.
Okay, I have some important questions on that, because when the last building was built, we had a holding cell. In the holding cell, we didn't have food, we didn't have medical, and we found that it wasn't used very often, because every officer in here, when you make the arrest, you're going to the county. You are headed to the county. Just keep in mind, I don't know how much this is going to be used, guys, gals, due to the fact that when the present building you're in, there was a holding cell. Some of us on the department argued that, due to the fact that we don't have the facilities to keep it. And you can't put a person in there without food, without medical, without water, without toilet. So just keep that in mind with that holding cell. It's probably about a bunch of evidence in there now, isn't it?
No, that's incorrect, and I was going to say, we do and we don't. We don't send everybody straight to the county. The temporary holding facility, for some of you who are not in law enforcement, most state charges go to the county jail, where they will then sit there to see future court hearings, or for to be held for future court proceedings if they are charged with a crime. Police don't charge anybody with a crime. The district attorney's office does that, and that's where they're held. However, when there is a crime and an arrest is made, they get brought to the Fitchburg Police Station. And today, this is where they get brought. And for a separate meeting, Senator Agard, when we're talking about additional services, no matter where you go, one thing that happens quite frequently is domestic violence. Those subjects that are arrested, we push for an interview, an interrogation. Those are things that when we're processing somebody, we're interviewing them, we're interrogating them. We're doing much more of that since I've been here in our current facility. Probably more than what you saw, and I'm just going to guess, I may be wrong, but we're really pushing, because that makes a stronger case in court, is to have those admissions, those confessions, or those any statements. So we really push to process, not only process, but to talk to that the suspect or the person that's detained regarding that crime.
Last question, just a quick one. In the bottom of that building, there was backup for 911. At one point, there was a backup facilities for the 911 center in case it went down. Is that going to be put in this building at all? Have you talked to the county at all? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's all.
That's the emergency operations center that was in the basement of City Hall has now moved to the fire station, to the original fire station, Station 1, and that's where the backup communications center are. We now, based on how the communications network is set up, we could bring in dispatchers from Sun Prairie, and they could dispatch for the city of Sun Prairie from our dispatch center. We could bring in Dane County dispatchers, and they could dispatch from our communications center. So it's kind of taking care of that. I will also add, just very quickly to your question, due to the number of our bigger investigations where we have shootings, armed robberies, larger investigations, in the last 6 months, there have been a number of times where we have had so many people in custody that we have had to commandeer meeting spaces where our city meetings are taking place upstairs in City Hall. We have no place else to hold people.
So these temporary holding cells are absolutely critical to this new facility, just based on how investigations are work, how long we're taking people before we take them downtown. We don't have a whole team of detectives that are ready and able to jump in and interview them immediately. So sometimes we have to have one person managing all those people that are temporarily in our custody.
Okay. So you mentioned the training bay. I'm curious if there's going to be room set aside for us to have a virtual option. I mean, this is something that police departments are increasingly investigating and going with.
Yes.
As opposed to just a tactical bay. Because I really, it's nice that we had people that went down to that police station. The only tactical bay I've ever seen is at the gun right facility. And I've heard $3 to $4 million being tossed around just for this component, the tactical training bay. I kind of would like to see it where we can move also into the future and have a virtual component, because with AI and so forth, you can update the scenario and have the police officers actually interacting with that scenario. And that might be something that would be a big draw for potential, recruitment.
We need the space to do it, though. So that's certainly the option to do that. The portable machines, the VR machines are all an option that are out there. But again, there are very few things that can replicate having to actually exert yourself physically and then go into a scenario where you're actually using your true weapon that you're trained with, that you'd be using in the field, and having the space to safely do that. So all of the training components that we talk about are all critical, from the defense and arrest tactics space, where we have mats where we can actually physically engage with someone. We could watch the nightly news from last night from an incident that happened in California, quickly recreate that scenario, and literally be training on that scenario the next day in our training space. To your point about the virtual trainings, yes, that can happen. Even that takes longer time to come up with that new scenario to get that programmed into the machine. Whereas with this new training space, we would literally be able to replicate that the next day or within hours after seeing that video footage, and have people engage in that same scenario using your actual weapon. So it's certainly a consideration, but we need that space to do it.
I think that's it.
I don't have a question, I have some answers, because you said, do we? And then the list of all the questions, do we want to support our police department into the future? Yes. My answer is yes. So thanks for asking the question.
Thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your feedback. Again,
I guess recommend if you got any additional comments or questions you think we can go home tonight, oh, what about this? Please just send us an email and we'll respond back. Go ahead, Chief.
No, anything? One person I failed to mention from Pepper Construction is the construction manager, Jared McDaniels, in the back. You heard us mention his name, but he's in the room and he's in back. We're hoping in the next couple of weeks, if not soon to be coming next month, to start really identifying and honing in on a financial number. Again, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.